You want me to solve the case of my own death? Klein reeled from what Dunn had just suggested. I thought I'd be doing civilian work, like cleaning toilets or something. Dunn chuckled. We'll be starting you at a slightly more advanced level. Klein was terrified and flattered at the same time. So what do I do exactly? First thing, you'll need to take a walk every day between your residence and Welch's until you find the Antigonus Journal. Dunn saw Klein's confusion. The theory is, you were under some kind of supernatural control that night. We suspect you took the journal with you from Welch's house and hid it somewhere on your way home, so there was no evidence with you when you committed suicide. Klein's brow furrowed. Sure, that makes sense, except I don't remember it. Dunn nodded. That's what the walks are for. They could trigger the return of your memories. Pay attention to any unusual sensations. Déjà vu, for example. Or a strange pull towards a place you've never been. Things like that. Klein considered. But didn't the medium, Daly, say there were no traces of anything from that night? She couldn't find anything. Dunn shrugged. Just because they haven't been found doesn't mean they don't exist. The human brain is unpredictable. And you are an extraordinary person, Klein. He appreciated Dunn's confidence in him. I hope you're right. Dunn leaned back in his chair. If you can find that journal, it'll go a long way toward your approval of becoming a Beyonder. This was the first thing that stirred some motivation in Klein. I'm on it. Good. The second order of business is to spend time in the archives here and familiarize yourself with our ancient literature. Artifacts, all of the documents we've been housing there for safekeeping. Klein had expected that. Will do. Dunn smiled, pleased. Then, you're all set. He moved to see Klein out, but Klein still had so many questions. Why are you stuck underground in this little office? Aren't you the captain? Dunn was amused. Klein reminded him of when he first began his Beyonder journey. This is the Chanis Gate, named for Archbishop Chanis, founder of the Nighthawks. There's one underneath the central church of every major city. We Nighthawks take turns guarding it every night. Klein absorbed that. What are you protecting? Beyond this gate, we store certain sequences of potion formulas, various magical materials, sealed artifacts. Dunn winked. Maybe, if you play your cards right, you'll get to see them one day. Klein grinned. I hope so. This is fascinating. He glanced out into the dark corridor. What if someone gets past you? Dunn smirked. That's why we have plenty of traps set. Don't worry, Klein. Security is of the utmost priority here. Only one person has ever stolen anything from Chanis Gate, and he was an archbishop who defected. His name was Inse Zangwil. Dunn's face turned serious. And trust me, it won't happen again. Dunn checked his watch and gestured to the door. Listen, on your way out, I want to make sure you see our accountant, Oriana. She'll give you an advanced paycheck. £12. Klein was stunned. That was more money than he'd ever had, and all at once. That's not necessary. Oh, I think it is, Klein. Dunn softened, sympathetic. I saw the apartment you're in. You can afford to have your own bathroom now. A bigger space for your family. Klein held his breath. He wanted that. Badly. Dunn looked him up and down. Plus, you'll need some better clothes. Klein flushed, embarrassed. Ouch. His eyes fell to his suit. It was cheaply made compared to Dunn's. Get yourself a well-tailored suit, a cane, a silk hat. And any decent gentleman also needs a wallet with a pocket watch. Dunn did some quick mental math. 12 pounds should cover that, with a bit to spare. Klein couldn't believe his generosity. Thank you. Dunn walked him out, locking the gate behind them, and they made the long journey back up to the entrance of Blackthorn Security Company. They found Roseanne, sleeping at her desk as usual. Dunn sighed. I hope we didn't disturb your nap. Roseanne lurched awake in her chair. Klein stifled a laugh. Would you please take Mr. Moretti to Oriana's office to collect his paycheck? And after that, please take him to see Old Neil. Klein raised an eyebrow. Old Neil? It's a nickname. He's a retired Nighthawk who still does some administrative tasks for us. He'll get you started with what you need from the archives. Dunn turned to leave, then stopped himself. One more thing. He pulled a small, folded piece of paper from his breast pocket. When you see Old Neil, give him this. You need access to the shooting range so you can learn how to use Welch's gun. Klein was surprised. I do? Definitely. You have to know how to protect yourself. And it'd be a waste of a nice revolver otherwise. Dunn glanced to the hallway behind them. And, you should probably catch up to Roseanne. Shit! Roseanne had left without him. Klein shot Dunn an exasperated smile and hustled after her. Roseanne started chatting as soon as he reached her. Oriana is wonderful. You'll get along well with her. Her father's a watchmaker, beautiful craftsmanship. Do you own a watch, Mr. Moretti? Klein didn't have time to answer before she opened the door to an office and cheerfully held the door for Klein. Hi, Oriana. This is Mr. Klein Moretti. Klein guessed that Oriana was young, maybe early 30s. She was fashionable, and her eyes brightened at the introduction. Welcome. She held out a payment slip to Klein. Sign this for me? Klein obeyed, and Oriana took the slip across the room, along with a small copper key. She spoke to him over her shoulder as she opened the large safe that sat in the corner. I know a little bit about what you're going through. The captain informed me. Is it true that you're here because you were involved in some kind of evil incident? Klein was startled by her bluntness. I guess that's true, yes. She took out a few bills and coins and locked the safe. She gathered the money into an envelope. I'm so sorry. And I'm here if you ever need to talk. I went through something similar myself, so I know how you're feeling. Klein's eyes widened. You did? Oriana met his gaze. Do you remember, about 15 years ago, there was a serial killer terrorizing Tingen City? Klein scanned his memory. I do remember that. The Bloody Butcher, they called him. My mother used to tell us about him to scare me and my sister. You weren't. I was. Oriana handed Klein the envelope of cash. If the Nighthawks hadn't arrived in time, I would have been his sixth victim. Klein was both horrified and amazed. The Nighthawks saved you. Does that mean the killer was a Beyonder? Oriana nodded solemnly, still scarred by the memory. He was preparing a demonic ritual. That's how the Nighthawks came to find him. Was it because he lost control? Klein blurted the question without thinking, but he could tell that Oriana didn't want to talk about it anymore. Sorry, I shouldn't have. She spoke gently as she filed his payslip. It was a long time ago. I was studying accounting at the time, and I felt I owed the Nighthawks a great debt. So I came here to work for them. Klein had to imagine this was a difficult topic. And here Oriana was, diving into her trauma and doing paperwork at the same time. Klein was impressed as hell. She turned to face him, all finished. That's it. I won't keep you any longer. But please, know you're not alone. Words couldn't express how much that meant to Klein. Thank you. He pocketed his cash as he exited the office. The folded bills felt thick in his hands. He'd certainly never carried this much money on his person before. Roseanne leaned against the wall as he approached. "Time to visit old Neil." They headed down the dark stone staircase once again, and finally arrived at another iron door. A bit less intimidating than the Chanis gate, thankfully. Roseanne raised the door knocker. "Come in." The voice sounded old and haggard. Klein pushed open the heavy door to reveal a narrow room, shelves lined with odd-looking jars and ingredients, a stove bubbling with some mysterious concoction. Or maybe it was coffee. Klein couldn't tell. Behind a table, an old man with gray hair and a black robe toiled over some yellowed pages by the light of a gas lamp. When he looked up, Klein noticed the wrinkles around his eyes and mouth were deep, and his dark red eyes were slightly cloudy. "You must be Klein Moretti. Would you like a cup of hand-ground coffee?" The old man moved to the stove without waiting for a response. "I don't drink coffee myself. If I do, I won't be able to sleep. And when I can't sleep, I tend to hear the whispers of voices that aren't there. You know how it is, kid." Klein wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he accepted his coffee and moved right past it. Sir, what text should I be reading from the archives?" Old Neil brought his hand to his head. "Ah, yes. The captain told me you were a historian. I'm particularly interested in your perspective on this journal." He gestured toward the papers he'd been reading. "It's the diary lost by Gustav Russell before his death. Or his so-called death. Some people think he never died. Became a god instead. You believe what you will." He waved his hand dismissively. "I've deciphered several of these symbols and confirmed that they're expressions of numbers and letters. But I hoped you would help me translate more." Klein was intrigued. Russell. That's the emperor who invented tarot and trains. Old Neil handed the ancient parchment to Klein unceremoniously. "Maybe we can compare historical records to the diary's entries and confirm whether he's a god or just another dead guy." Klein took the pages eagerly. A journal written in a strange tongue. Sure, why not add one more? That's my specialty. Journals were practically the only thing he'd thought about since he woke up as Klein Moretti. But one look at the Emperor's diary, and Klein's jaw dropped. Holy shit. Gustav Russell wasn't an inventor? He was a fraud. Klein stared at the pages in absolute fucking amazement. Russell came here from my old world, from Cade's world, and brought that knowledge with him. He revolutionized this place because he was like me. And I'm the only person here who knows it. Because I can read this. This isn't a strange tongue. This journal is written in English. Klein's mind raced as he devoured the text from the frayed yellow pages of Emperor Gustav Russell's diary, trying to be conscious of old Neil's watchful eye. English doesn't exist here. There's only one explanation. Gustav Russell must have been from my world. Or Cade's world. Whatever you want to call it. He was like me. The entries were scattered all over, from different months of uncertain years. November 18th. It was miraculous. An accident allowed me to discover a poor man trapped in the storm and lost in the depths of darkness. He's lucky to have met me, the savior of this era. Klein suppressed a grin. A cocky son of a bitch. I love it. He read on. January 4th. Why are my children so stupid? Klein coughed to cover a laugh. Funny, too. He turned the page. October 11th. The key to potions is not mastering them, but digestion. One can derive the most from a potion when it's properly digested. Klein blinked. Isn't that the point of drinking potions, or drinking anything? He let it go and moved to the next entry. September 22nd. There's an alliance against me. From Faysac in the north, Loan in the east, and Phainapata in the south, my enemies have banded together. But I am not afraid. Have they forgotten who I am? October 3rd. I chose my pathway too quickly. In hindsight, I should have chosen the seer, or the apprentice, or marauder, but there's no going back now. Klein read a few more entries and found nothing of substance in the few pages he had, but it was still enough to thrill him. If he's truly like me, if we're on similar journeys, I'm positive I can unlock the secrets of Beyonder powers. If only there was more I could read. Old Neil grunted, seeing that Klein had reached the end. Did you solve the whole thing already? Klein ignored the question. Where's the rest of this journal? Old Neil shrugged. It's unfortunate, but there are very few artifacts left from Emperor Russell. If any more still exist, the churches keep them under lock and key. Klein thought carefully. I can't tell anyone I come from a different universe. It opens up too many questions and puts me in danger. Besides, I don't want to lose the advantage of being the only one who can read Russell's writing. Klein cleared his throat. Well, I hope to be the first to decipher them. Old Neil laughed. You do that, kid. An awkward silence filled the air, but thankfully, Klein remembered the note that Dunn had given him. He handed it to Neil. From the captain. Neil grabbed the paper with his shaky hands and examined it quite close to his face. He looked at Klein skeptically. You? A gun? Klein flushed. Why not? Neil sighed. What type of bullets do you need? Pistol? Rifle? Revolver? Neil walked to the other end of the room without another word, opening another large iron door that somehow Klein hadn't noticed until now. Klein waited patiently as Neil clumsily rummaged through the closet, finally emerging with arms full of, arms. He stumbled toward Klein and dumped everything onto the table. You'll need a holster. A Nighthawk carries his gun on his side, so it's easily accessible. Neil slid the holster across to Klein, then moved on to a box. 30 rounds of bullets. Use those for target practice. Then he slid a smaller box across the table. 10 rounds of demon hunting bullets. For any supernatural threats you may face out in the world. Klein swallowed. Sounds scary. Neil handed Klein the last item in the pile. Finally, your badge for the Special Operations Department. Klein picked up the police badge and examined it. Strange. I look like a real cop. Neil gestured to the leather holster. Let's see if it fits. Klein put his arms through the leather straps and Neil fastened it behind him, making sure the cowhide gun pouch was situated firmly under his arm. Good. You look the part, at least. Klein gave Neil a gracious nod as he tucked his badge away and pocketed the boxes of bullets. What a day. Klein walked down the street, drained. He stuck his hands in his pockets and felt the wad of cash he'd just been given. 12 pounds is a lot of money to carry around. He felt anxious all of a sudden. A stagecoach won't have change for bills this big. Neither will any of the markets. Shit, it's gonna look suspicious if I try to spend them. He was about to run home and stash all of it under his mattress when he remembered that Dunn had explicitly told him to buy new clothes. And up ahead, he saw a sign that read, Welker Clothing Shop. That'll work. They're used to rich people and large bills. Klein nervously entered the store and surveyed the layout. The walls were lined with rows of coats, shirts, trousers, vests, and ties. And there was a large glass case housing shiny leather shoes and boots. A harsh voice with a posh accent startled him. Are you going to buy anything? Klein turned to see a small man leering at him. Or are you just going to stand there and stare? And he wasn't alone in his attitude. The other employees, and even some patrons, stared at Klein with disdain. Do you automatically become an asshole when you have money, or is it learned behavior? Feeling more out of place than ever, Klein looked around in a panic, and a row of canes on display caught his eye. Cane. I came in here for a cane. The employee cocked an eyebrow and led Klein to the display. He watched as Klein perused, probably making sure he didn't try to steal anything. Klein picked out a wooden cane with silver accents. He liked the look of it. It was classy, not too ostentatious. How much for this one? The man sneered. £5, if you can afford it. Klein smirked, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a crisp note. The snide employee snatched the bill from his hand. No choice but to sell Klein the cane. Klein exited the shop with pride, having made his first big purchase, maybe ever. He tapped the cane on the ground as he walked, the silver accents glinting in the sun, the smooth wood gliding along his palm. That felt good. Klein couldn't wait to see Melissa and tell her the excellent news. But first thing upon arriving home, he opened the oven to find Welch's revolver, placing it in his brand new holster. He was just in time, too, as Melissa emerged from the bedroom. What was all that tapping I heard? Klein proudly held up his new cane for her to see. Is that silver? She was furious, but Klein beamed. I got a new job. Her eyes narrowed. But isn't your interview at the university tomorrow? Yes, but I found something different. Something better. Klein tried to sweep her up in his excitement, but she stepped back. What's the job? He thought of a lie on the way home. It's a security company that protects historical artifacts. It pays well, Melissa. We can finally move out of here and have our own bathroom. She paled. Have you lost your mind? Klein's face fell. I thought you'd be happy. Melissa frowned. I'm glad you got a new job, but we have to be realistic. We can't change our entire lifestyle just because you're making a few extra pence. Klein winced. Ow. He tried a different idea. Well, can we at least go out to dinner? Go out to dinner? She scoffed, horrified. We still have some groceries and leftovers. I'll make something. Klein felt awful. Melissa was clearly traumatized by their poverty in the past several years, and he was crushed that no one had been able to protect her. She couldn't even enjoy the slightest indulgence. I'm not hungry. Klein retreated to his bedroom, giving up on the idea of celebrating for now. The next day, Klein decided to go to Tingen University and inform them he would no longer be applying for the teaching job. Maybe it was Melissa's influence, but he chose to walk rather than take a taxi. At least I have my nice new cane. He entered the small brick administrative building of the university and headed straight to the office where his interview was supposed to be. Come in, a familiar man's voice sounded through the door. Klein entered to find the university's dean at his desk. He held up a hand to Klein. We're not starting interviews for another hour. Dean Stone, good to see you. I'm early because I wanted to tell you that I've found another job and won't be taking the interview today. He smiled apologetically. But thank you for the opportunity. The dean relaxed. I see. I appreciate you coming all the way down here to let us know. A voice from outside the room wafted in, interrupting. Is that Klein Moretti? Klein turned to greet his mentors, Quentin Cohen and Arthur Azik, 2 history professors at the university. They were feisty old men with silver hair, wrinkled and bearded and full of life. Klein was genuinely happy to see them. Professors! They embraced cordially. Azik's eyes widened in alarm. We're not interrupting your interview, are we? Klein shook his head. I found another job. A security company that collects and protects antiquities. Cohen smiled. Well, congratulations. That sounds wonderful. But his smile faded. I presume you heard what happened to Welch and Naya. I read it in the newspaper that it was a burglary gone wrong. Klein hadn't realized that the news had hit the papers. A burglary? But it dawned on him. It's a cover-up. He lowered his gaze. Yes, it's awful. But Klein realized, now that their deaths were public, his mentors could potentially help him. Before they passed, we were working on translating an ancient text, a journal from the Antigonus family. Cohen gasped. Antigonus? That's from the 4th epoch. Klein looked between them, hopeful. If any artifacts from that era cross your desk, would you let me know? I'd like to finish what we started. Azik's voice was solemn. Absolutely. Dean Stone tapped the newspaper. You'll be happy to know that the burglar who killed your friends was caught. That's good to hear. He waved a bittersweet goodbye as the professors excused themselves and headed into the dean's office. Klein tapped his new cane on the sidewalk as he walked the tree-lined street outside the university. But out of nowhere, something didn't feel right. He stopped in his tracks and listened to the eerie quiet. Too quiet, in fact, for this part of the day. The hair on the back of his neck suddenly stood up, and he knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm being watched. Klein's first instinct was to pick up his pace, but he didn't want whoever or whatever was watching him to become suspicious. Could it be whatever supernatural force that killed Welch and Naya and tried to kill me? Back for another round? He looked to his left, toward the university, then to his right, toward the street. Slow and calculated movements. Doing his best to appear as if he were simply taking in the scenery. Act natural, Klein. There was no one, only buildings, trees, and a few university students. But Klein couldn't shake the presence of this invisible gaze. He realized he had stopped walking, standing completely still in the middle of the sidewalk, waiting for someone to reveal themselves. His senses were firing on all cylinders, but it was almost overwhelming. After what seemed like an eternity, Klein finally allowed himself to breathe. Maybe the luck ritual heightened my perception. I can't explain it, but something feels different. A taxi carriage rounded the corner up ahead. Klein lifted his hand in the air. I need to go home right now. No, wait. I don't want this thing following me there. I'll go back to the Blackthorn security building. No, come on, Klein. Don't lead them right to the Nighthawks. The carriage pulled up to Klein, and he hopped in. Champagne Street, please. It was random, but it was the first road he could think of. Most importantly, it wasn't here, and it wasn't anywhere that could lead him to trouble. Sixpence. Klein pulled a couple of coins from his pocket and tossed them to the carriage driver, who promptly pulled the reins and took off. The second they started moving, the feeling of being watched vanished, and Klein's anxiety subsided. Hopefully I lost them. He breathed a sigh of relief when the carriage reached Champagne Street without incident. However, the moment Klein stepped onto the sidewalk, he felt eyes on him again. What the hell? How could they follow me that quickly? He walked briskly in a direction, any direction. Okay, Klein. Think about where you are. He looked to his left and right, less subtly than before. A tall bell tower peeked over the buildingscape of Champagne Street. St. Selena's Cathedral. It connects to the Nighthawks tunnels. Roseanne mentioned it once. St. Selena's was the headquarters of the Church of the Evernight Goddess in Tingen City, and it was just around the corner. Klein switched directions, heading straight for it. I'll be safe there. And even with fear surging through him, it was hard not to take in the beauty of the Gothic cathedral. Its deep black walls housing red and blue latticed windows, and its tall mottled bell tower sitting atop a giant central buttress. Klein pushed open the large back door and entered the church, which was mid-service. Sure, now's as good a time to pray as any. Klein walked down the aisle into the prayer hall, bathed in colored light from the windows. He sat down in an empty pew and closed his eyes. The feeling of being watched vanished once again. Thank the goddess. He quickly bowed his head and tapped his chest in 4 points. Might as well thank the goddess officially since he was in a church. The gentle voice of the bishop led the congregation in prayer. And even though he had always looked at gods through an academic lens, Klein couldn't help but lower his gaze. He wasn't just in here to get away from whatever was chasing him. He was praying, for real, allowing the bishop's words to cleanse his mind. The service came to an end, and Klein hurried to the confessional booth, where several people lined up, eager to rid themselves of their burdens. Klein joined the queue and waited patiently, enjoying the majesty of the church and the solitude of not being followed. After nearly 20 minutes, it was finally Klein's turn. He stepped in and closed the door behind him, sealing himself in darkness. The bishop's voice came from behind the wooden barrier. Child, what do you want to say? Klein took out his Special Operations Department badge and slid it through the small gap in the partition. "Someone is following me. Can you help me get to the Nighthawks?" The bishop took the badge, and Klein waited, hopeful. After a moment, the bishop's voice came through as a whisper. "There is a secret door next to the confessional to the right. Someone will guide you when you enter." "Thank you." Klein snatched his badge back and followed the instructions. He saw an arched altar to the right and headed in its direction. Behind it, there was a crack in the wall, perfectly straight. Another crack ran perpendicular to it above, and then another, forming the shape of a door. He glanced behind him. Only a few people remained in the confessional queue, and they were too preoccupied to notice him. Klein pushed on the frame, and the door opened quietly as he slipped in unseen. The door closed behind him, shrouding him in pitch black, until a middle-aged man wearing a black priest robe appeared in the light of a lantern in front of him. His voice was deep, almost melodic. "What do you need, child?" Klein flashed his badge again. "I need to see Captain Dunn Smith." Without another moment's hesitation, the priest walked back, leading Klein toward the Nighthawks' stone corridor. They didn't speak a word in the dark and narrow corridor for the long journey down. They approached a door, and the priest pulled a key from his robe and opened it, pointing to a set of steep stone stairs. "To the left, at the crossroads, is the Janus Gate." Klein nodded, grateful. "May the goddess bless you. And you, child." Klein carefully descended the massive stairway. To his left was the Janus Gate. Since Dunn had certainly ended his shift by now, Klein took the tiring trek back up to the reception hall. Klein rushed right past a sleeping Roseanne and straight into Dunn's office. "Come in." But when Dunn saw Klein, confusion crossed his face. "Didn't Roseanne wake?" Klein cut him off, getting right to the chase. "Someone's following me, Dunn." Dunn sat up in his chair, serious. "How do you know?" Klein paced, too anxious to sit. I can't shake the feeling." Dunn pondered this for a moment. "Interesting." Klein stared. "Is he serious?" Dunn held up his hands apologetically. "We'll figure it out together, Klein. I promise." He took a breath. "Maybe Welch's family didn't believe the cause of death we reported and hired a private investigator." It didn't seem likely to Klein, but he supposed it could be an answer. Dunn weighed another option. "Of course, we can't rule out other individuals or organizations who may also be pursuing the Antigonist Journal." This sent a chill down Klein's spine. "I hope it's just a private eye." He turned to face Dunn. "What should I do?" Dunn considered carefully. "Go about your day. Do as you normally would. The Nighthawks will keep watch over you and make sure nothing happens." He softened, sympathetic. "You have my word." It didn't ease Klein's mind, but he had no other choice. He sighed. "Thank you, Captain." But as Klein made his way out, a thought occurred to him. Whatever was making me feel uneasy, it didn't follow me into the church. Maybe it can't, or its evil spirit would be cleansed. Either way, he was sure he wasn't being followed by a private detective. With that in mind, Klein decided it would be best to exit back through the church. When he emerged through the secret door again, Klein took a moment to bask in the sanctuary of the church before he ventured out into the world, where he felt much more vulnerable. But when he stepped outside, squinting in the bright sunlight, for now, the uneasiness stayed away. Small victories, but the experience had rattled him. "I need to protect myself from whatever this thing is." Klein felt the revolver under his arm, cold and heavy. He hailed a taxi carriage back to the Blackthorn building and headed straight for the Nighthawk shooting range across the street. He flashed his badge to the attendant and chose a lane. The target was set at 10 meters, and Klein reached into his coat pocket, opting for the regular bullets over the demon-hunting ones. Shouldn't waste those. He loaded his revolver, closed one eye, and pointed the gun at the target, remembering with horror that the last time he shot a gun, it was pointed at his own head. Klein didn't even see a mark on the target. Shit. He pointed again. The bullet hit the outer edge, far from the center. Come on. He took several more shots, none of them landing where he wanted them to, his frustration building. Damn it! He lowered the gun, giving himself a moment. You can do this. You are an extraordinary person. Klein closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling his anxiety melt away. You are Klein fucking Moretti. He opened his eyes again, extended his arm toward the target, and pulled the trigger. Bullseye. Klein walked through the brisk night air, hands firmly in his pockets for warmth. His time at the gun range had ended successfully, but he didn't know if that would actually translate to a real-life encounter. In the heat of the moment, I don't know if I could really shoot someone. And he hoped never to find out. Klein practically jumped out of his skin before he realized he'd just heard a newspaper flapping in the wind. Shit! I guess I'm more on edge than I thought. The city seemed dead. There wasn't another soul out walking with Klein. The silence sent a chill down his spine. Where is everyone? It was at that exact moment that he felt the sensation return. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and he knew that he was being watched. Klein shivered. I can't quite describe it, but there's definitely a presence here with me, matching my every step. He hastened his pace. Before he realized it, he was practically running. I won't be caught. He climbed the steps to his apartment 2 at a time, as if the entity watching him was right on his heels. As if he could possibly outrun whatever it was. He fumbled with his keys, desperately trying to unlock the door. It clicked and he swung the door open, running headlong into a man. Fuck, my gun, I should reach for my gun. Whoa, Klein, what's gotten into you? Klein froze, glancing up for the first time to see Benson, his older brother, home from the docks. Klein stared at him for a moment as he tried to square his mind. I'm safe. This isn't a person hunting me. It's my brother. He knew Benson from Klein's memories, but this was the first time he was actually meeting him as the new Klein. He closed the door behind him, catching his breath. Yeah, sorry, just cold out there. Benson's eyes narrowed, concerned. You sure? You look like you've seen a ghost. Klein shook it off. I'm fine. Honest. I didn't know you were coming home tonight. Benson shrugged. I had the afternoon off. Wanted to see my family. Taking his first good look at Benson, he couldn't help but notice that his brother looked a lot older than the 25-year-old he was. I guess that's the cost of being poor and having to work so hard to keep your siblings alive. It was a stark reminder of how much Benson had sacrificed for Klein and Melissa. Well, come here. Benson put his arm over Klein's shoulders and pulled him close, ruffling his hair. Don't act like you don't miss me. Klein smiled to himself, still not used to the warmth and affection of siblings. He pulled back playfully. Stop. I have to look presentable. Benson beamed. That's right, Melissa told me. My little brother finally got himself an honest-to-goodness grown-up job. Klein blushed. It's true. He ribbed Benson lightly. Someone has to take care of the family. Benson grinned. Oh, yeah? Did you read about that in one of your books? Klein feigned surprise. Oh, you've heard of books. Benson lunged at him and Klein ducked, agitating his shoulder, still sore from the shooting range. I need to get stronger. Benson laughed off the teasing. He leaned against the counter, shifting into a more serious topic. Listen, I'll talk to the landlord about breaking our lease early so we can finally get out of this hellhole. In the meantime, you should get some good groceries and we'll make a celebratory dinner. He looked at the pots and pans and rubbed the back of his neck. Or Melissa can make a celebratory dinner while we pretend we're helping. Klein bit his lip. She's not going to like any of that. Benson was surprised. I thought she likes to cook. Klein nodded. Oh, she does. But she doesn't like spending money. You haven't been home since the topic's come up. He saw Benson's confusion and headed for the door. You'll see. This was the first time Klein had been at the market with some actual cash in his pocket, and he really wanted to enjoy it. Unfortunately, he couldn't, because he felt that dark presence watching him once again. I thought it was creepy when I was alone, but it might actually be worse when I'm surrounded by people. It could be anyone. He instinctively reached for his revolver just to find some comfort, but his shoulder twinged again. Push-ups, starting tomorrow. Not eager to brandish his weapon in public, he instead reached for the fidget toy Melissa made for him. He absent-mindedly spun the clicking mechanism with his thumb, a perfect outlet for his anxiety as he perused the market. He felt even more inspired to make sure Melissa had a good meal tonight. She was helping him now, without even knowing it, thanks to her little invention. He approached an upscale butcher with a wide variety of options, the likes of which Klein would never have even considered last week. He puffed out his chest proudly. "Give me your choicest cuts." Melissa slid a piece of sizzling steak onto Klein's plate. "Food's ready." Klein could barely wait to dig in. "Oh, it looks great." Benson cut into his own steak. "You know, one of these days, you're going to have to learn to cook." Klein raised an eyebrow. "Speak for yourself." Benson gripped his fork. "Hey, I can make some mean pasta." Melissa barked out a laugh as she took her seat. "So, you know how to boil water. And here I thought you were helpless." But when it came time for her to eat, Melissa stared at the steak on her plate. "Maybe you should let me do the shopping though, Klein. This steak was way too expensive. We can't eat like this every night." She took a tiny bite, savoring it. "Maybe I'll save half for lunch tomorrow." Klein and Benson exchanged a somber look. Benson cleared his throat. "Mel, I'm sorry things have been so hard for us. Since we've been on our own, I know we've gone hungry and cold, and I wish I had done better for us. I really do." His earnestness struck a chord with Klein. Taking care of us was a huge burden, and he doesn't hold it against us at all. Melissa shook her head. "You don't have to apologize. Ever. You're the only reason we're still here, Benson." Benson elbowed Klein. "At least we can both lean on Klein now that he's a big-shot security guard." Klein chimed in with his mouth full. "Two incomes is better than one." Benson stared. Thank the goddess for that college degree. Klein knows his numbers. But Melissa was too lost in thought to join in on the teasing. "But we can't count on any of it forever. Nothing seems to last." Benson put his hand on hers. "Hey, don't let the fear of what we could lose take away from celebrating what we have." He held up his glass for a toast. "And what we have is a brother finally carrying his own weight." He smirked wryly. "To Klein." Melissa raised her glass. Klein turned beet red. Klein washed the dishes while Benson shoved a protesting Melissa out of the kitchen. "You need sleep. You cooked, we'll clean." She yawned, done arguing. "Just don't half-ass it, okay?" She retreated to her bedroom, and Benson sighed. "When have I ever half-assed anything?" Klein rolled his eyes. "She's a control freak." Benson stepped in to dry, gesturing to the sitting area. "I'll take the couch tonight." Klein balked. "Are you sure? You don't have to do that." Benson took a deep breath. "Of course I do. That's my job as the older brother. I always get the short stick." Klein pretended to be really interested in the dish he was scrubbing. "Where do you sleep when you stay by the docks? Got a secret girlfriend or something?" Klein hoped that was the case, because otherwise, if only. Benson took the dish, weighing his words. "We don't have enough bedrooms there." Klein understood what Benson was saying. He was probably sleeping on the floor, or worse. Klein shut off the water, serious. "You know, Melissa and I, we both really appreciate everything you've done for us. I don't say it enough." "That's it." Benson dropped his dish towel. "Who are you, and what did you do with my weird brother?" Klein froze. Shit. Does he know? Benson relaxed. "Ah, there he is. Stuck in his own head." He chuckled. Klein was hit with a deep sense of sadness. This was his new family. But they had no idea that their brother The original Klein was gone. He wanted nothing more than to just forget that he wasn't ever Klein. But every now and then, it came back, like a bullet to the head. Not much later that night, Klein fell into bed with a full belly and a warm heart. As he closed his eyes, he grinned like the fool he was. Things were looking up for their little family. I think we're going to be okay. Klein woke back in the carriage with Dunn. He looked around, baffled. How long had they been riding together? Wait, were the past 2 days all a dream? Dunn watched him closely. Well, Klein studied him, trying to figure out where they were. Well, what? Dunn said nothing, waiting, and suddenly a wave of realization hit Klein. Oh, I'm dreaming right now, aren't I? Dunn nodded. You got on quick, which is good, because you need to wake up. Klein's brow furrowed. What? Why? Didn't I just fall asleep? Dunn leaned forward. Listen to me carefully, Klein. You need to wake up and grab your revolver from under your mattress. Klein felt foggy, like his brain couldn't quite catch up. I don't understand. Dunn grabbed his shoulders. I can't help you where I am. I need you to get him out into the hallway. Klein's breath caught in his throat. Who? Dunn eyed him gravely. The man in your room. Dunn shook Klein's shoulders until Klein's eyes shot open. His vision blurred into 1,000 crimson fireworks, and then refocused in his dark bedroom. He was awake now, and seemingly just in time. He saw in his periphery a shadowy figure looming in the corner. Klein squinted. Is this real or the remnants of a dream? The figure rummaged through his desk. It's real, all right. Klein tried to silently get out of bed, but the shadowy figure snapped its head toward him. Shit.